Let's go back to a piece that Alyssa Finley wrote in the Journal over the weekend, where she asked the question, did pot make the Dallas ICE shooter psychotic? I'm talking about the heavy drug use here. She writes, many who knew the shooter didn't say he didn't seem especially political. He's more interested in marijuana and video games. Increasing studies show that the use of marijuana, especially at high potency, is associated with violent behavior, schizophrenia, psychosis, and suicidal thoughts, not to mention heart attacks and strokes. Those associations hold when researchers control for demographics, mental and other illnesses, and use of other drugs. Our friend Alex Berenson wrote a book about it. Correlation doesn't prove causation, she quickly notes, which is true. But the primary factors that scientists look at to demonstrate a causal effect, consistency of strength of association, dose response, plausible biologic mechanism, coherence between lab and observational finding, and experimental evidence, all suggest cannabis use can trigger psychosis and violent inclinations. As a teenager, the Dallas ICE shooter often posted on Reddit forum for cannabis users. In April of 2016, he pled guilty to a felony count of trafficking marijuana. The following year, he moved to Washington State, one of the first states to legalize cannabis for recreational use, to work on a pot farm. The farm's manager, Ryan Sanderson, told the New York Post, he was all about the weed. He wanted to be part of the scene. He lived in his car while he helped. There are people who work and there are people who go through the motions. He was one of those guys. He didn't work that hard, probably because he was too high. She goes on to note something we've noted on this show before. It's just the science. Cannabis-induced psychosis is a well-documented psychiatric disorder more common among people who use pot at a young age and suffer mental illness. THC, the psychoactive ingredient, gets sopped up by the brain's fatty deposits and can alter its chemistry. That differentiates it from alcohol, which washes out of the body after a few hours. She also notes, Alyssa Finley in her piece, the transgender man who shot up that Catholic church, Annunciation Catholic Church, blamed his pot habit. Gender and weed effed up my head, he wrote in a note found by investigators. I wish I could stop vaping, but I can't. If I could stop vaping, I could stop myself from doing this attack, but I just don't want to. Other mass shooters have also been found to be heavy pot users. Plenty of other examples. So it's one of the things that we talked about last time Jim Fitzgerald was on the show, when we're talking about some of these mass shooters and you see some similarities in terms of the profile. Do we start building a profile on people that are gender dysphoric combined with a toxicology profile? Are they heavy marijuana users, other drugs? In point of fact, there is reporting out of that in the case of the Mormon church shooting in Michigan, the individual who killed 4 people and wounded 8, and set that church on fire. Not only did he have animus towards the Church of Latter-day Saints, and maybe that has something to do with a personal relationship he had with a woman when he was in Utah who was a member of the church, unclear. But there are other reports from people who knew him that he was a heavy drug user. I have not read details of what that alleged heavy drug use was, but to the point. James Fitzgerald is a retired FBI special agent, criminal profiler from the Unabomber case. He's also served as a consultant for the TV show Criminal Minds and is the author of the series A Journey to the Center of the Mind. James, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Hey, Dan, good to be here. And I guess nowadays, since the last week, you can throw in, was their mother taking Tylenol when they were pregnant? So who knows? But I brought up the pot topic a few years ago with you and other media outlets. The brain is not formed well into the 20s. We kind of know a person's 20 years of age and beyond that. And it seems, and I'm not a scientist, I don't study these things full time, but the general reports that you just cited that I've read, it definitely screws with the brain, certainly in its formative years. And how does this play into these young men, usually young white men, who are heavily involved in smoking marijuana, whether it's an addiction or not? Who knows if you're physically addicted to marijuana, but it certainly seems to be psychologically addictive. And then it leads to these bad behaviors. And the worst of the kinds are when they kill other people. Of course, they kill themselves or just become zombies and game all day and go on Discord sites and argue with people about nothing. Who knows? But I have a feeling if a serious study is done from my former profiling unit, as well as others, of all these types of shooters over the last dozen years or so, including the trans ones you mentioned, you're going to see pot smoking as a common denominator. I'd be very surprised if it wasn't.
So it seems to me, though, that the only way to really prevent these sorts of individuals who have these problems, drug use, mental illness, isolation, some combination of the two, is, somebody intercedes when there is sort of the first indication that this is someone prone to violence, whether it's violence to exact a personal vendetta or whether it's violence that is political in orientation because of some radicalization that occurred or some target that was brought into focus in a group setting. I mean, you can profile this because we see these common attributes, but then of course it's a small percentage of even people that have those shared traits and shared interests that go on to commit any crimes, much less mass shootings. So it just seems like it has to be, as soon as somebody suggests that violence is the answer to whatever the identified problem is, that's when somebody has got to move on that person.
Well, they should, and it should be a family member that contacts law enforcement and at least gets this person in the system. I know with the Florida school shooter years ago, that was he was reported to the FBI. Nothing was done. I wasn't very happy about that. But at least get these people in the system somehow, get them interviewed, have some kind of an intervention perhaps with them. And of course, not all of them turn violent. And Dan, mix in there, these are most likely incels. These are guys that, they don't date the kind of women they want. It's not the women's fault, of course, but these are friggin' potheads. And what woman want to date with some guy like this with zero future ahead of him? But I've going back to Kaczynski, and I was, it was years later that the term incel sort of came popular. But I was one of the first people to say, yeah, I think he was an incel too, because he just never had a serious woman in his life. And you'll see sort of a contraindicator to these shooters, be them trans and whoever they would date in their transitory stages or not, but very few of them actually are involved in any kind of serious relationship. I know the Charlie Kirk shooter had some kind of a furry thing going. Who knows? Maybe the litter box wasn't clean that day and got him upset. I have no idea. But these guys are usually not involved in relationships, which also doesn't. I think young men need sometimes a woman in their life or a partner to, in fact, sort of bring down some of the more violent tendencies or stupid tendencies. And that seems to be another box that's checked, if you will, or maybe unchecked, no serious relationship in their life.
Yeah.
And just had to go and kill people.
Yeah. It's just sort of a cultural commentary. It's not really a solution. But I mean, we used to understand that women were supposed to be a civilizing influence in society, right? I mean, that's...
except that they have blue hair.
Well, yeah. I mean, some of them that we see outside ICE facilities, less so. I concede the point. Did you have any perspective on either of the mass shootings that happened this weekend with military veterans, the one in Michigan I just mentioned, and the one in North Carolina? And here again, how does this guy have a weapon? What did the VA know about this guy? Was he getting any sort of treatment for mental health issues? Because, this is a guy who was public in the sense that he filed legal complaints that were unintelligible and contained all kinds of conspiracy theories that were not even fully formed. And he's representing himself pro se. I mean, just because somebody's a little bit off center and does that sort of thing, avails themselves of the courts, doesn't make him necessarily a public safety threat. But, you start to put some pieces together and maybe you say, this guy needs to be, as you said, spoken with.
Intervention of some sorts. Yeah. And I mean, it was bizarre. We've had sort of a series of trans shooting young men, potheads that fit in certain categories. Then over this weekend alone, within about 12 hours, we had 2 vets, 3 lives in North Carolina, 4 in Michigan, and who knows, there may be more if they don't survive their hospital stay. So, yeah, what's up with that? It seems both were pre-planned to some degree. And, my son's a vet, and I know hundreds of vets over my life. This is not a persistent problem throughout, our military, certainly during or after, but occasionally we do have people that come on board. I remember I worked with a company after I retired from the Bureau. Long story, very short. We were contacted by a military psychologist and say, hey, can you guys help us put a database together where we could search all the emails out there for different kinds of violent or vitriolic sort of language. And we put together a dictionary of about 200 words just to begin with, murder, kill, frustration, anger, all these things. And the military was considering buying this database to search all the emails of their military people because they basically own the email system. And we were actually moving ahead with this. All of a sudden, this captain came back to me, the psychologist said, no, can't do it anymore. They pulled the funds for this. Oh, okay. And I think that would have been a very interesting tool. Now, these guys are out of the military. I'm not sure that would have worked, but we certainly would have had possibly some indications from any emails they were doing during the times when they served. And we still have people active duty that sometimes do stupid things like this. So I would like to see some kind of, and I'm a big First Amendment guy and certainly Second Amendment, but some way to sort of track these things that if certain words are hit on repeatedly, let's at least go knock on the door with a friendly smile. Hey, can we talk? Can you come into the office? And let's see what this, what burning issues this person has. But many of them are grievance collectors. They're injustice collectors. These are terms psychologists have coined over the years that every little last slight or misfortune that happened to them, they just keep inside of them. It foments inside until finally they just snap. So the predictability is difficult to do, but I think there are some steps we could take. I just mentioned one of them, some kind of a database that people in the military could review. Obviously, there's algorithms that could pick up these terms. Wouldn't be people reading every single email. Google does it, Facebook and Instagram do it, and they know what we watch and what we want to hear about and what ads we get. I think it could be done by the military also.
Before we let you go, I did have to get your reaction to the indictment of former FBI Director Jim Comey. I just was curious, maybe I know you keep in touch with guys you used to work with at the Bureau and stuff, and what the general reaction is to the federal government moving on him.
No one in my circle, and it's an extended circle, seems to be overly concerned about it. Of course, due process is innocent until proven guilty, all that stuff. But as most of my friends agree, you look up the word hubris in the dictionary, it tends to be Jim Comey's picture right next to that word. So, whatever happens to him happens. I know Pat Fitzgerald, no relation, his attorney. Mm-hmm. I actually worked with both of them in the Southern District of New York on a few bank robbery cases back in the late 80s, early 90s. So I know both of them. Pat Fitzgerald's a very good attorney. Comey he's who he was. And but I have. Okay.
One's a very good attorney. The other is who he is. Yes. Okay.
Yeah. So he deserves this. I'm glad they beat the statute of limitations. There are other charges that could have come against him, but of course the 5-year time frame or whatever it was has surpassed. So I have no problem with this, and he brought this upon himself. I don't feel sorry at all. I was going over my notes, Dan, from back in the day, 2018, 2019. I talked to you about Mueller and Comey and everything going on here, and this is nothing new for us to discuss. Here we are 4-5 years later discussing Comey again. But again, you bring this stuff down on yourself. I don't feel sorry for you at all.
What about Chris Wray and the revelation that there were some 274 FBI agents or assets in and around the Capitol on January 6th?
I need more information on that. That's bothersome. And why didn't that just come out in his testimony? So again, but we probably have 3.5 or more years for or close to 5 for Chris Wray to be charged. I just don't know. Some agents may have been sent once the alleged riot, allegedly started to hey guys, get out there and just supervise, find out what you can. That may be the majority of the agents who were sent out there, really not prepared for that. I was a former police officer. I had riot training. I think I would know what to do, at least with my nightstick. But, we don't have nightsticks in the FBI. So yeah, I think the majority were probably there, as a response. What I want to know is the assets. And you said, agents and assets is two different things. And I'd like to know the exact number of assets, which to me has never been clearly answered, even by Ray under oath. And perhaps someday he could be facing some of the same issues that Comey is right now.
Yeah, but I mean, but his lack of forthrightness during testimony before Congress, leads one to believe that there were things that he didn't want the public to know about what he okayed on January 6th. And so, it's hard to give the FBI the benefit of the doubt.
Well, and I'm still interested in January 5th and the Phantom bomber and what the FBI may have known about that, not collectively with everyone, but if there's some rogue element group there. I'm not saying they planned it or coordinated it, but I have a feeling there may be more information out there than we're presently being told. And I hope that this present administration digs that stuff out.
James Fitzgerald is a retired FBI special agent, criminal profiler from the Unabomber case. He also served as a consultant for the TV show Criminal Minds, and he's the author of the series A Journey to the Center of the Mind. Jim, thank you as always. Appreciate it.
All right, Dan, you're welcome.
And Jim Fitzgerald joined us on the Turnkey.Pro Answer Line.
This is the morning show more Chicago radio listeners are choosing. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
At Signature Bank, going the distance for business banking customers is what we do every day. We understand that business